Hello YouTube, this is my channel, Killer Fabrications, and today I'm going to be starting a new build series. I'm going to be building a TIG welded mountain bike frame. It's going to be a rigid 29er. That's just going to be like a fun ride around, bike packing, sort of do whatever bike. So I'm going to actually be fitting the top tube today, and I'll show you how I go about doing that. So this is the top tube I'm going to be using today. It is 35 millimeters in diameter. It is a butted tube, which means the thickness of the tube, the actual width of the walls, change sort of depending on the length of the tube. So on this one, it's actually a little bit thicker, where I've actually marked it out in blue, just to give you an idea. So the butt length is actually from this sort of copper line to the end on both sides. So when you go to cut your tubes, you want to make sure that you're cutting out of the thicker part and not cutting it all off one side, so you're cutting down to the thinner part of the tube. It makes it much harder to weld or to braze or whatever you're happen to be using to stick your tubes together. So on this tube, I've already marked out the cuts. I marked out a center line, and I'm going to be using a program called Bikepacking, which you can design your bike frames, and it gives you all kinds of measurements and stuff, what you need to use to cut your tubes. Another great thing about Bikepacking is if you're like me and you don't have access to a lathe and a mill, is you get these little templates, which you can cut out. So this one, if you see, I don't know if you can see that, it says top tube, head tube, and this is the top tube, seat tube connection, and then they're marked bottom and top, so you have them in the correct phase. So what you don't want is to have, bottom on one side and top on the other side, because then your tube's not gonna fit together properly. So let's stick these on in the sort of the correct spot where they're supposed to be. So my top tube, from miter to miter distance, which is this distance from the deepest parts of your miter, so here to here, on the top is 545 millimeters. So I've actually already marked that with this little line here on both sides. So let me go lay out and mark the tubes, and I'll show you how I go about cutting and filing them. So I took my templates and I wrapped them around my tube, and what I do is I actually scribe a line all the way around the tube so I know where I'm filing and cutting to, and then I slide the template down just so that I don't actually end up cutting and ruining the template. So I do that on both sides. And all you really need, and all I actually use, is a small saw. This is just a little coping saw that I use. You can use a hacksaw as well. I find this easier to make curved cuts. And a couple of good files, and that's all you really need to start cutting and mitering your tubes. So let me pop this in the vise and show you how I do that. Oh my god, this is so dull. Well, that blade is super dull, and I don't have another one, so let's use the hacksaw. So there's the little end piece, and as you can see, the cut is, actually I don't know if you can see that, let's focus that. As you can see, the cut is super rough, so I'm actually just going to take a little bit more out of there. That side's okay, and then I'll just file that to fit. So let me just go do that. So now that I have that all very, very roughly, it's very sharp as well, I'm just going to take sort of my roughest half round file, and I'm going to clean it up so I get close-ish to the lines, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. So I'll cut the other side very roughly rough in the miter, and then I will take my finer, sort of nicer files, and then I will fit it to the frame, and I'll show you how I do that. Another thing to remember, that files only cut in one direction. They only cut on the push direction. Oops. So if you start doing this on the file, bringing it back, you can actually break all the little teeth. Another important thing to have is a file card, because as you can see, lots of little bits of steel actually get embedded in the file. So you just take it and you just rub your file card across it. You try to get rid of all of those little bits. So I will go ahead and continue to rough this in, and then I'll be right back. So I have the tube all roughed out, pretty close on to the line on both sides. So I'm just going to do a test fit and see how it fits, and then we'll sort of adjust from there. So let's pop this guy out. The down tube I cut actually at a buddy's house who has a lathe, which is quite convenient. So this goes sort of just about like that. So I'll bring you in for a closer look, and then yeah, we'll go from there. It actually fits pretty good right now. So here's a close-up of the top tube and head tube sort of intersection, and the down tube I guess as well. And then we'll go over here, and here's a sort of a close-up of the C tube and the top tube. So this is actually a collar. So this is 35 mil 035 straight wall chromoly tubing, and then I actually made this little piece here on a lathe at my buddy's place. So this fits 30.9 seat tube. So I'll actually have to weld that, and then I'll take the weld away to fit this in. But so far, let's just focus. I think it fits pretty good. So there's the bottom bracket. It's a little bit of a gap here that I'll go ahead and I'll fix. But so far, I'm actually quite pleased with how that's turned out. So that's it for today on my mountain bike frame build. So I have the front triangle mitered up. It's fitting pretty good right now. I got a little bit more cleaning up to do. Some of the edges are kind of sharp, but then next time we'll finish up the front triangle and we'll start on the rear triangle. Thanks for watching.